Hey everyone, it's Natalie Bensavanga, and welcome to another edition of Facts Over Fear. I'm really looking forward to today's conversation because we're going to dive right into the world of food influencers and how they're actually influencing more spaces than just perhaps, dishes you're cooking up at home. Today I'm chatting with one of my favorites, Joanne Lee Molinaro. She is better known to millions of people as the Korean vegan. She has built a remarkable presence as a food focused creator, sharing her love of vegan cuisine, while more recently has been using her platform to explore pressing social and legal issues, in particular around ICE, immigration, and fascism. Beyond her recipes and storytelling, she's also a trained lawyer and an outspoken voice on systemic justice. I wanted to explore how, Joanne, how you're balancing these worlds, why you are feeling compelled to speak out, and the unique perspective that you're bringing, both as a former legal professional and a creator currently shaping public discourse in both the food spaces and now, of course, in the social justice space. So thank you so much for being here with me.
I'm so excited to be here.
I really appreciate it. So, as you guys know, I interviewed Joanne a few months back, and I was so excited to interview you. I absolutely love your cookbooks, The Korean Vegan and The Korean Vegan Homemade. I use them all the time at home as a vegan myself for over 12, 15 years at this point. I just appreciate somebody that's taking the food of their own homeland, of their childhood, and finding ways to create it in a more compassionate way. And so that was really my first introduction to you as a creator. And over the years, I've just been astounded by the level of success that you have had and the community that you have built with your authentic voice. And you're really showcasing what is going on in the world from your perspective as a child of immigrants, as a non-white woman, and as a person with a huge platform. And some would say, a lot of people would probably be like, oh, you might want to shut up because you've got so much to lose, right? But I think you're exactly the kind of person that needs to be putting it out there. And so I really respect that. And I wanted to talk to you a little bit about that. So before we get into a fun little lightning round that I have planned, I just wanted to hear from you because to me, it seemed like pretty much as soon as ICE really started taking hold, I've noticed your commentary has shifted along with it. Can you talk about where you're at mentally these days?
Yeah, so there's a lot packed into that question. I'll start by saying that I don't really view it as a pivot. I've been
Mhm.
Donald Trump and ICE literally from when I started the Korean League. It was just the reason I turned. If a pivot occurred, it occurred way back in 2016 when he was first. It really happened because prior to that, it was truly just a food account. All I
Yeah.
did was pretty pictures and recipes. And when he got elected in 2016, that's when I was like, okay, now, I may not call it a political account,
Sure.
but the reason I started sharing stories about immigrants was because I needed to show America that there was this other kind of American that was getting lost and erased, and that was being threatened by the then administration. That has never changed. That has always been the mission of the Korean vegan. And so, what you're seeing a little bit more of, I guess, is legal content. But
Mhm.
even then, when the election fraud litigation was going on in 2020 after Joe Biden won the election, I was doing a lot of legal content as well back then, just because it was exigent. And I felt like, well, I have an expertise. It's what led to my op ed in The Atlantic. So I've always been posting legal content. It just so happened that, I don't know, around the holidays or like, I don't know if it was at the end of December or the beginning of January, I was like, you know what? I should do one of those random legal things posts. Like these are random things
Mhm.
learned while being a trial lawyer that has nothing to do with the pressing matters, but like, how to use a laundry machine, how not to build a staircase, what are cardboard boxes made out of? But- And it went super viral, like
Mhm.
super viral. And I realized, well, there's a good contingent of my community that's very interested in the law, like legal stuff.
Mhm.
And so I started posting about that. And then we started seeing the craziness happening with ICE. at just another level.
Yeah.
And I took that format and basically started saying, let's talk about constitutional law. Let's talk about what's happening in the news as opposed to just random things that I learned while being a lawyer. And it was a very easy switch to make because my audience already loved that style of content.
And I think that's a good distinction because that's really what I've been noticing more of, to your point, is sort of this new style of content that you've been putting out more consistently. Of course, you have always centered, social justice in your work. But to me lately, it just feels like you've just been putting everybody on blast. And I'm just so here for it. So I wanted to touch a little bit more on some of the things that you've been saying because obviously being a creator and having such a large platform, you're getting a lot of comments coming at you and a lot of people with big feelings and a lot of opinions. And of course, that's okay. That's to be expected. But I just wanted to talk a little bit about something that someone said to you recently on your Instagram and share with us in this little lightning round edition how you felt in the moment when you were reacting to it. When people say to you, stop being so political.
Yeah, I get that a lot. I've been getting that pretty much every time I say anything political. And I got a version of that literally hours after Alex Pretty's death because I posted something about it and somebody wrote, I followed you for the recipes and I'm so sick of all this political stuff. And it was a slap in the face. It was a total slap in the face. I was like, how can you not understand why this is the thing that's on my heart right now? What you want to start posting recipes when people are getting murdered in the streets? I had just watched the video and this is one of the dangers of being on social media so addictively is that you don't know what you're seeing. You're just scrolling and, oh, well, you see a cat video, you see an ice cream video. Oh, you see a man get murdered on the streets.
Oof.
That was how it happened for me. I didn't even know what I was seeing. And I was so traumatized by it. I just immediately burst into tears. I post what I post a couple hours later, and to have someone say something like that is essentially coming to somebody's funeral and saying, can you share your banana recipe with me right now?" It was so insensitive, and it incensed me. I was so angry
Hmm.
because I felt like there were people out there who were part of my community. She was a follower of mine who were not allowing me to be my human self in this moment. And so, part of being a content creator or a community leader or a community creator is showing leadership in these times. And for me, I wanted to be a leader for my community and say to them, this is the kind of space that I've created. And this is the kind of space that I will continue to cultivate. If you don't wanna be a part of this space, that's up to you. You're welcome
Yeah.
to leave, but that's not gonna change. It's always been this way, and it will always be this way. I'm putting you guys on notice right now. If you don't wanna be here, that's up to you. You can absolutely leave, but I am not changing what this is about.
I so respect that. Okay, here's another one. Fascism's most effective ally is despair. You wrote this very recently, and I really liked this one. Can you elaborate on that and where that came from?
Yeah, every time I post about the Fourth Amendment these days in particular, and obviously that's very relevant because of all of the things we're seeing with ICE, the blatant violation of the Fourth Amendment, among many other amendments to the Constitution, I get the same comment. The law doesn't matter. The law is useless. I got a long, somewhat rambly, unstable email from somebody, basically saying that the problem with you is that you don't realize that the law doesn't matter anymore and none of it matters, which of course is, personally offensive because I'm a lawyer and I
Right.
devoted my life to the law. But beyond that, it was like, so you're just going to give up? Is that what we're
Mm,
talking about? You're going to give up on the system of law? Because I don't think people realize that law is not just like speeding tickets and,
right.
just murder. That's really not necessarily, the A to Z of the law. Without the law, there is no democracy. There's no justice. There's no freedom. Nothing that we value as Americans. Our
Mhm.
identity is at stake. And if you give up on the law, you've given up on our identity. And so when I say that, fascism's greatest ally is despair, despair is essentially the idea of turning away from hope and saying it doesn't exist anymore. We're giving up. There's nothing else we can do. And that is exactly what fascism is designed to do. It's
Mhm.
designed to take away all agency from the people and centralize it in whoever has that power so that we no longer have any choice. And that is really what I'm trying to empower my community to understand. We need to understand that. So this instinct to say, there's no law, who cares? I can't do anything. We have to fight against that.
No, absolutely, and it got me thinking around this idea that fascism and authoritarianism, they require you to give in before they actually demand of you to give in, right? And so this idea of giving them anything before it's over is madness, because you're right, we have all of these tools at our disposal, and while things seem very difficult right now, I think this is where the resiliency of immigrant communities, refugee communities, can actually be of support to a lot of, let's say, white Americans who have never really experienced any kind of governmental pushback or um, governmental harm being perpetrated upon them. And so there is that sort of lack of resiliency in a sense because it hasn't been baked in to any of their life lived experiences or their families. Can you talk a little bit about that from your perspective as a daughter of immigrants?
Well, my parents are both wartime refugees. They were born in what is now known as North Korea, and they've been through many political upheavals in Korea, which South Korea, the Republic of Korea, is such a young democracy compared to
Mhm.
the United States, and so its birth and its youth, if you will, was marked by a lot of upheaval. There were, we have Seungwanri, we have the Gwangju uprising. We had a recent 2-hour implementation of martial law. I mean, there's all sorts of things that have been happening in Korean politics. And I think because of that, my parents, um, they've always cultivated in our house a very free space for thinking
Mhm.
and encouragement of political, not debate, but expression. Let's
Mhm.
talk about these things. Let's talk about what's important. Let's talk about what's happening, my father especially. And I think, you know, one of the things that actually resulted in is not just political literacy, but political resiliency. It was really an education on democracies are hard, they're hard, and, they're not easy. You have to
Mhm.
fight them. You cannot fall asleep at the wheel. There's
Mhm.
fraud, there's corruption, there's greed. All of these things are always biting at the heels of any democracy, so you have to stay alert, and when it's time to fight, we need to be prepared to do that.
Mhm.
You also need to learn how to recognize, well, what are we fighting for? These are kind of the things that I think they learned from just growing up through all of that political upheaval through Korea's history that they sort of imparted, not really on purpose, just by
Mhm.
cultivating a very open table for discussion.
So let's get back to some of the things that you've shared on social lately. I really liked this one. The Hell, hey, fellow lawyers, if you think there are other law things that don't constitute legal advice, ICE agents should know. Consider this a prompt because we are all very interested. Can you elaborate on what you were talking to there?
Yeah, well, so I created this video on random law things that are obviously not very random that I think citizens should know. And it's tongue in cheek. And again, it was more about providing hope to people than it was actually trying to tell ICE agents anything because I assume they're not listening, or if they're listening, then they really should be talking to their lawyers. And it actually was, sort of a throwback to something I'd seen. It was footage from I believe, a congressional hearing with Eric Swalwell, and he was telling everyone, "You all better save your money and hire some lawyers because a reckoning is coming." And you are
Oh,
gonna need lawyers. You're gonna need legal advice. and I just loved that energy so much, you know? And so I've been thinking about that for a really long time. And that was really what I wanted to convey in this video. And, I had received so many comments to that video, and the theme is, "Oh, this gives me hope. This gives me hope." And that's really what I wanted to inspire in my community. And so when I did that little comment that I pinned at the bottom of my video, "Hey, fellow lawyers, if you have anything else," it was sort of a tongue in cheek invitation to let's give some hope to these people who
Yeah.
may not understand, the finer nuances of the law. I don't understand them all. I'm not a
Mhm.
criminal. I mean, I've done some criminal matters, but that's not really the bulk of my practice. So I was like, especially if you're a criminal attorney, now's your chance. Really, like, be the show, like, be the star of this show because this expertise is very much needed.
So let's talk a little bit more. I have one more of our lightning round before I get into some general questions. This one, I'm paraphrasing slightly, but I think it still gets the point across. This one was focused on your feelings around Epstein. And you said the women supporting, defending, and protecting rich pedophiles who have raped little girls basically have a very special place in hell. Now, that's quite a statement to say, publicly, with so many people watching. Why did you feel the need to speak on what's going on with Epstein? Obviously, this is one of the biggest issues right now here in the United States, and there does seem to be a lot of silence around it from certain groups of people. So, why did you feel compelled to say, "Hey, what are we doing here? Why aren't we talking about this, and why is nothing happening?"
I wanted to send a very clear message to the women who need to hear it that I'm here for women.
Mm,
I'm here for women, and that statement doesn't read like it's "I'm here for women," but it is, because I felt that women like Pam Bondi, who are doing everything in their power to silence the victims here, is so repulsive and is such a hurtful betrayal to us as women. I wanted to make sure that everybody in my community knew that I hold her to account morally, legally, in every way that I can as a citizen of this country, as a woman of this country, that I view what she is doing as a disgusting betrayal to her own gender. I'd elaborated on it in my Instagram stories prior to writing that. And really, you know, as an attorney, you parse through these pages and, I don't wanna get into the specifics
sure.
of it, but the rules of evidence, statutes of limitation, there's all sorts of things that make this a very Byzantine exercise, right? You have to rip out the salaciousness of it to some degree to really get to, well, what's actionable here? What can we
Right.
actually do about these millions and millions of pages? So that's an exercise that I don't intend to do. I really just
Mhm.
wanted to speak to my gut reaction to what I was seeing, and what I kept seeing is Pam Bondi et al. And by
Mm,
that, I mean women who really are the public faces of this Trump administration, doing everything in their power to not just protect him, but by incidentalness, if you want to call it that, every other person who's attached to these files.
mhm.
And I was like, these women were all girls at some point in their lives. They were all 10, 12, 14-year-old girls.
Yeah.
What happened to that piece of them that they're able to completely bind them and say, you know what? 14-year-old Pam Bondi, 14-year-old Christine Ohm, 14-year-old Leave It Lady, you don't exist for now. You cannot exist because my job entails making you stay silent so I can help these people who would have hurt you. I
Mm,
find that so I don't understand that. Like, it hurts me to even think of that.
yeah. And I couldn't agree more. And I think in this moment, it has been really interesting to see how people are moving around this topic and really how all of this is culminating, all of these issues we talked about around fascism, ICE, immigration, the Epstein files, and the absolute obliteration of the law, how it all comes back to this idea of abuse of power and who feels that they have the right to do whatever they want to do under this guise of, I'm in a position of authority. And I think that's really important that we're all calling out truth to power wherever we can, in particular around these very sensitive topics. So, as we wrap up here, because Joanne, I always so appreciate your time and your willingness to come on and speak to me in these moments. As a food creator, as somebody who works in now this space, and with all of this context around your other life, having done law and all of these things, I see how you're marrying really these two spaces in this moment. But can you talk a little bit about your process and why it is important that we look at food as a way to discuss the political and social moments and movements of our time?
Food has been the subject of 98% of wars in human history,
Mm,
whether food access, food distribution, food production, food cost, food deserts. These are things that have always been a source of conflict, of immense conflict. So the notion that you can somehow extract, the politics from food is simply absurd. And
mhm,
the more we see this commodification of food without some discussion to the humanity underneath it, how it's produced, how it's served, how it's made, how it's handed down, who it's served to, who has access to it, how much it costs, all of those things. You just want to ignore that part of food. Well, you're just ignoring humanness altogether. Everyone's terrified of the AI coming to take over of everything. Oh, I mean, we've already allowed that to happen, to some degree. We've already you traded in our humanity for algorithms, attention, and certainly dollars. That's nothing new, right? So to me, especially as a child of immigrants, food was the one big way I was able to stay connected with my heritage. And I think many children of immigrants and immigrants themselves, certainly if they're refugees and they can't return to their homelands, I mean, food is one of the most important ways they maintain that connection with who they are, what their traditions are, what their identity is. And so it's a natural place to have these types of conversations about
mhm.
the national identity of America, the so-called melting pot. The pot is a reference to food, you know?
Yeah.
Well, I think it makes sense. I do have to be very careful. I can't be sitting here every single day and being like, here's my new kimchi recipe when people are getting shot in the streets, when Minnesota has been assaulted on a minute to minute basis, when children are getting kidnapped. I have to be sensitive to the community to make sure that I'm not harming them in some way with my cavalier attitude about what it means to be a content creator. I know other content creators don't feel the same sense of obligation to their community, but I've spent 10 years cultivating the Korean vegan community. I know what they need. I know what they want. And I intend to be a responsible leader of that community.
Joanne, I so appreciate all the times that we get to chat together. I hope you'll come back because I have a feeling as I continue to look at your Instagram account over the next several months, we're going to have a lot more to talk about.
Yeah, yeah,
But
unfortunately or fortunately.
yeah, either way. But I do know that you had a very recent cookbook drop, and in the spirit of sharing all of the things that you're cooking up, can you please let people know where they can find that?
Yeah, you can find the Korean Vegan Homemade anywhere books are sold. I'm particularly pushing the indie bookstores right now for all the reasons that we don't even need to enumerate. You can find links to that in my bio of any social media account that I have.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for joining me. I so appreciate our time together. And as always, everyone, until next time, please take care of yourselves and each other. Have a great night. Thanks again, Joanne.